A powerful millionaire CEO thought he had seen it all, until one quiet night in his car, his simple maid whispered two words that changed everything. What happened next left him completely shocked, and it will surprise you too. The city lights glittered against the night sky as the millionaire CEO slid into the back seat of his sleek black car. His mind was buzzing with numbers, meetings, and the deals he had struck during the day. Success had always followed him, but so had loneliness, though he rarely admitted it. Just as he settled down, adjusting his cufflinks, he noticed something unusual in the seat beside him. His humble maid, the woman who quietly kept his home in order, was sitting nervously with folded hands. He blinked in surprise, unsure why she was there. Normally she stayed far away from his professional world. The car door clicked shut, and silence hung between them like a heavy curtain. He opened his mouth to ask, but before a word could escape, she raised her finger. "Be quiet," she whispered firmly, her eyes locking onto his with a seriousness he had never seen before. The CEO froze, his mouth half open in protest. No one ever told him to keep silent, not even board members or world leaders he dealt with. But her tone carried something deeper than authority. It carried urgency. For the first time in years, he obeyed without question. The car hummed softly as it began to move through the dimly lit streets. The maid kept glancing out of the window, her posture tense, as though she was listening for something unseen. He leaned back, confusion stirring in his chest. What could possibly make her so bold? The CEO had always considered her invisible, someone who moved silently through the mansion, dusting shelves and arranging flowers. Yet tonight she seemed transformed, her silence filled with weight. He watched her, trying to decode her expression. Suddenly, she tapped the driver's shoulder and gestured for him to take a different route. The driver hesitated, unsure, but followed her instructions without question. The CEO's heart raced. This was not the routine. This was not the plan. "What's happening?" he whispered, but again she turned, pressed her finger to her lips, and said, "Quiet, just trust me." Against his instincts, he nodded slowly. The car twisted down unfamiliar streets, leaving behind the glowing towers of wealth and luxury. They entered a quieter part of town, where the air felt heavier and shadows stretched longer. The maid's hands trembled slightly, but her gaze was steady. Finally, after several turns, the car slowed near an old building with broken windows. "Stop here," she ordered the driver. And then she looked at the CEO. Her voice softened, but her eyes still carried fire. "Sir, before you ask questions, please listen. Tonight is not about money or business. It's about life and truth." The CEO frowned, his chest tightening, curiosity fighting with disbelief. They stepped out of the car, the cool night air brushing against their faces. The maid led him toward the old building, her pace quick, as though time itself was running short. Inside, he heard muffled voices, cries, and the sound of children coughing. His expensive shoes clicked against the cracked floor, echoing strangely in the silence. When the door opened, his heart stopped. Dozens of children, thin, pale, and frightened, were huddled inside, some lying on the floor, others holding each other for comfort. Their eyes reflected both fear and hope, and the CEO felt a lump rise in his throat. He turned to his maid in disbelief. "These are orphans," she said, her voice breaking for the first time that night. "They have no one. No family, no food, no shelter. I've been caring for them secretly with what little I have, but it isn't enough." The CEO felt his mind spin. He had been so wrapped up in his empire that he had never imagined such suffering existed just blocks away from his mansion. The maid looked down, ashamed. "I didn't want you to think less of me, but tonight they were starving and I didn't know where else to turn. That's why I asked you to be silent. If they saw your wealth first, they might fear you. But if they saw your heart, maybe they'd trust you." The millionaire CEO, who had spent years negotiating billion-dollar deals without flinching, now felt his chest tighten with emotion. He knelt down beside a little boy who clutched a worn teddy bear, his eyes hollow with hunger. Gently, the CEO placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered, "You're safe now." The boy blinked, as if unsure whether to believe him. One by one, the children looked at him, and for the first time in years, the CEO felt truly human. He turned to his maid, his voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Her eyes glistened with tears. "Because I wasn't sure if you would hear me." Something inside the CEO shifted that night, something deeper than success or pride. He realized that all his wealth meant nothing if he couldn't use it to change lives. Looking around the room, he saw not weakness but potential, future leaders, dreamers and souls waiting to be lifted. He stood tall, his voice strong but gentle. "From this day forward you are not alone." The maid gasped softly, unable to hold back her tears. The children stared at him, unsure whether to believe, yet his sincerity wrapped them in hope. For once, his promise was not to shareholders or partners, but to the forgotten. The days that followed were unlike anything the CEO had ever lived before. He used his influence to renovate the building, bringing doctors, teachers, and caretakers. The children received food, clothes, and beds, and their laughter began to fill the halls where silence once lived. The maid, who had once been invisible, became the heart of this new beginning, guiding the children with love and kindness. The CEO often visited, sometimes to read them stories, sometimes to simply sit and listen. Each visit healed a part of him he didn't know was broken, and each smile reminded him that true power was not in wealth, but in compassion. One evening, as he prepared to leave the orphanage, the maid stood beside him. Her eyes shone with gratitude, but also with quiet strength. "Thank you for listening when I told you to be quiet," she said softly. He smiled, realizing how those two words had changed his life forever. The man who once believed silence was weakness had learned it could open the door to truth. As his car drove away, he glanced back at the glowing lights of the building, filled with laughter. For the first time in his life, he felt richer than any title, any empire, or any deal could ever make him.